Okay, so I'm going to start recording. So this is who in your kingdom, understanding the game of life and how to win. Can everyone see that? Can everyone see this? So there's a famous quote from Shakespeare: all the world's a stage and all the men and women are merely players. And that's the concept. And Shakespeare understood subconscious and the psyche, and all his plays were mythological. And we use a lot of mythological concepts in psychology, like Oedipus, based on a lot of these, or that's myth, but the stories that Shakespeare did. So he's a really good sort of reference point for us. And that's basically, in a synopsis, what this is. Your world, your life, I don't care if it's work, I don't care if it's home, I don't care if it's your love life, is a stage. Every one of those areas in your life is a stage. And all the people in your, let's say, job for a moment, are all players. And you've created these players, you've made them, you move the pieces around. You just don't know, because we haven't been educated that we have a rule book to our life, and we surely have not been given the rules. So in many of my lectures, I teach you this. I'm going to get to the point today. This is a game. I'm going to teach you how to win the game of life. It sounds a little narcissistic and egotistical, because who am I? But this is just metaphysics, psychology, philosophy, theory. This is just the way it is. You can't win the game if you don't know the rules. That's what I was telling you guys on Tuesday. You need to know your values. You need to know what game you're playing. I mean, if you're playing Pac-Man and you're using the rules of Monopoly, they probably aren't the same. So today I just want to tell you about the game of life, how to win. And of course, because my language is the mind, I use the subconscious. So I'm calling your game or your life a kingdom, okay? This kingdom exists in your subconscious. Then it plays out in your life, but the origin of the game starts in the mind. And metaphysical principle number one, all is mind. Okay, so I'm referring back to that. So what are the rules to the kingdom and then to the game? You are given the players at the moment of conception. They never change. You can move to Australia, and I have had clients who have moved to the other end of the earth trying to get away from their kingdom, from their mind, ultimately from themselves, and you can't, because you take yourself with you. Your players are given at the moment of conception. They live in your subconscious and they never change. They live in your head and they show up mainly as two voices. I call them the competitive and the collaborative. So your friends, family, people you love, people you get along with are your collaborative voices. The people you don't like, even if you don't hate them to the death, are your enemies. They're your competitive voices. Some players get along. Let's say your mother and your sister get along, or your boss and your boyfriend get along. Those people are collaborative voices. They get along, those players. They're not going to cause a problem. We'll get to that. Other players in your kingdom, other players in your game of life don't get along, and they're considered competitive voices. I'll go deeper into that. The way to win the game is to get them to all get along. If you cannot, and I don't necessarily know if I believe that anybody has ever achieved the ability to get all of the people in their life to get along, all of the voices to get along. So I don't even know if I believe that that's fully possible. In my first book, I talk about the 80-20. So maybe if 80% of your friends and voices and people in your life, the players in your kingdom, get along, maybe that's the definition of winning. But what you want to do is at least have them coexist without damaging you. You may not know this, but we are self-destructive. Okay, all people have a self-destructive tendency. I taught you many moons ago about pleasure versus pain. Some people self-destruct with pleasure, their hedonists, they maybe overdo food or drugs or whatever, pleasure, sex, material, flesh desires, stuff. Other people like pain, suffering, like me. I used to be that way, the martyr, the victim, the rescuer, scapegoat, nail me to the cross. But we are self-destructive human beings. And at the root of our psyche, we don't necessarily know how to achieve happiness, if that even exists. We don't necessarily even want to be in peace and coexist in peace. So the game is about at least all these voices, all the people in your kingdom, all the players of your game, to at least coexist without damaging you, because you're the target. You're the player of the game. You're the one that runs the show. The entire game exists in your head, and you bring it to life by bringing in the characters into your life. If you think that you're going to avoid an aspect, there's 12 players for every single person, and you think you're going to only play the game with 10, you are mistaken. Okay? You bring these people into your life. They live in your work, they live in your job, they live in, that's the same thing, right? Your work, they live in your family, they live in your relationships, in your friendships. All 12 are always there. When you learn to identify them, then you really get in control. There are only a set number of characters, 12. Everyone has the same players, no more, no less. Everyone in your life must represent one of these players. If you can name them, if you can give them some characteristic, then you can identify them in other areas of your life. Today we're going to use the family, and I'm going to use obviously my story so you can kind of see. And there is one shortcut, and I will tell you that's the one shortcut to win the game. About the players, you get 12 players, that's it. The same 12 players will show up in every area of your life. If you identify who they are originally, you will know how to navigate them. I find it easiest to use my family and my closest friends. So I made my little kingdom in one of the slides, and I'll share that with you. And if I can identify those players, then I know I can identify it in my workplace, at my church, at my reunion, at school, high school, wherever. So I would recommend that you name and identify the 12 players, because then you're going to be like, ooh, that person's like my mom, that person's like my dog, that person's like my brother. You create every player. Nobody is coming into your life that you have not given permission to enter your life. They represent a player. When one player leaves, the next player takes its place. There's no empty spaces. Your board never has more or less than 12 players. Every player has something to teach you. Some lessons you want, some you don't. Every player is an aspect of your subconscious mind. I told you, you create the players. This all starts in your head. At the moment of conception, you're given all of this. If you integrate the players, they will all get along and the kingdom will be peaceful. Probably not going to happen 100%, like I said, 80% of the time. But we do want all the players to at least not kill you in the process and have you self-destruct. This is a lifetime journey and the purpose of life. You cannot master this game probably until your deathbed, if even then. We're not looking at past lives. We're not looking at reincarnation. If it's a belief system, that's fine. We're going to leave it out for a moment, and we're looking at the moment of conception to the moment of death. This is the game of life. About the players. You all have a mother and father. You know that you do, whether it's an egg or a sperm, a petri dish, a test tube, it doesn't matter. If you knew your parents, you don't know your parents, it doesn't matter. You have an egg in the sperm. It's the masculine, it's the feminine, it's the subconscious. You know, I have a whole theory about that. This is an expansion of that theory. The other 10 players of your life are the children, so to speak, the offspring of this union. Again, some get along, some don't. Think about it as sibling rivalry. Mom and dad, and then all the other voices, competitive or collaborative, or all your brothers and sisters that speak to you in your psyche and then show up. In my first book, I called one of my voices the perfect older sister. This is obviously a competitive voice that criticizes and judges me. Not that that's my perfect older sister in real life. That's just what I named her. Your mother and father represent your masculine and feminine principle. We talked about the law of gender and all of that. We talked about the overt power, the covert power. This is all an extension of those previous principles. Everyone shows up as your mother or father. You don't want to play the game with 12 and you want to bring it down to 2, go back to the 7 gates. Mother and father represent every person, place, thing, or situation. This is more fun because I think that you can really start seeing all the players in your game of life. Players can be humans, animals, organizations, political beliefs, sports teams, anyone. If it's a person, place, thing, or situation, it could be a player. But again, you only have 12. So you have to identify your sports team as 1. You have to identify your political belief as 1, your animal is 1, etc. Name your players. This is just a recommendation. It's easier to identify if you give them names. I'm first going to use the Greek gods. You, of course, can find another mythology. You can find another story. Pick a fairy tale. I don't care. And or just give them your family names if that's going to make it easier. But I recommend naming them. Who are the 12 players? I told you before to not get wrapped up in astrology. Astrology is just one language to say this, and I will refer to astrology in a minute, but that is not your language. Don't worry about it. There's mythology, there's movies, there's every single way. It's your life. So these are the players, whether you know them or not. Better to identify them. If you were watching a Netflix special, or if you went to the theater post-COVID, you would see all these characters in every single movie. Don't you want to identify them in your life, in your game? The sun, the moon, Mercury, Mars, Venus, Saturn, Jupiter, Neptune, Uranus, Pluto, Black Moon, and Chiron. If you like astrology, those are the names of your players. If you don't, basically you have a father and a mother. This does not mean that your father and your mother have to be your birth father and your birth mother. My mother figure is actually my friend Adriana. So don't get hung up on that. Okay, but you do have a mother and a father that then birthed all the other 10 players. You have a trickster, thief, talker, gossip, cheat, steal. Somebody in your life that has that sort of manipulative tendency. You've got someone in your life that's conflictive, angry, assertive. Maybe they stand up for themselves. Maybe they're the combative one in your life. You have somebody in your life that's love, beauty, sensual, makeup is image-based. Maybe they love to post selfies. That person is in your life. You have somebody that represents structure, discipline, limitation, rules, authority figure. Maybe that's your church. Maybe that's the rule book at your job. Maybe that's your job or your boss. Maybe that's your bank account because you're limited. You have the cool, crazy aunt or uncle, someone who's wise, who teaches you in cool ways. They might have traveled the world. Maybe they have a lot of money or they're financially savvy. You have someone that I call the fool, the innocent. They live in la la land. They're clueless. They might be very spiritual, but they pretty much live in the cloud and they daydream. They're not too in touch with reality. You have someone that's a freedom fighter, a freedom seeker, independent, social activist, really smart. Maybe they're really into IT. They really get it. They've got a quick wit, a quick brain. You've got someone who is dark humor, maybe depressed, suicidal, hermetic. They like to stay in their room all the time by themselves, not really interact too much with people. Maybe don't even ever have a girlfriend or a boyfriend. They're kind of on the dark side. You've got someone in your life that's scandalous. It could be with words. It could be with posts on Instagram. It could be at your office. It could be sexual. It could be someone who's a prostitute or lives very promiscuous. They defy the norms. You love to hate this person. This reminds me of the Howard Stern movie, and I'm definitely aging myself, where Paul Giamatti looks at the ratings and he's like, the people who hate Howard Stern listen twice as much than the people that love Howard Stern. So it could be a personality on TV. It could be a podcast you listen to. But there's somebody who defies the norms that you love to hate. And then there's someone that's like the wounded healer, the wounded child. Maybe they were abandoned or adopted. Maybe they're deformed physically. Maybe they love animals, or especially wounded animals, or this could be your animal too, because it could be animals. These are the 12 players in your life. They never, ever change. The actual person that represents the person may change. So your trickster friend might get caught and go to jail. You stop talking to them, and now another guy comes in. It's the girl you gossip at work with. But they're always in your life at all times. You are never, ever free of these players, aka these voices, aka these subconscious parts, what I call your psychological organs. So who's who in Greek mythology? I'm just using Greek mythology. Again, you can use any mythology, any story, your own life preferably, but if it helps you to see a story and then identify those characters in your life, go ahead. Sun or Apollo, it could be God, it could be Christ, it could be your God figure, it could be your mentor, your ideal person, someone that you look up to, someone that's sort of the light or you think does it the right way. Your moon or your Demeter is your mother figure, does not have to be your mother. It is the person that nurtures you, that has love, compassion, empathy, nurture, maybe makes you a cup of soup when you're sick. Mercury or Hermes is the trickster. He lies, he cheats, he steals, he manipulates. It could be a younger brother, a younger sister. They get away with murder. It's like that person that you say, my God, they can say something and they get away with murder. Your Mars or your Aries, this person is conflictive, aggressive, assertive, violent. They could be an athlete. They could be a bodybuilder. They're very about their muscles, perhaps. Aphrodite or Venus is beauty, love, sensual, image-based, loves perfume, makeup, skin, touch, textiles, could be studying fashion design, could be a makeup artist, things like that. Remember, you're extrapolating these to a person, place, thing, or situation, or an animal. Saturn or Kronos is a father figure. He gives you limits or authority. Again, it could be your paycheck. Jupiter or Zeus, crazy uncle or aunt, wise, world travel, financially savvy. They usually are fun. This would also be a friend in your life or somebody in your life that cheats a lot on their spouse or is lover to lover to lover type of attitude. Neptune or Hephaestus is what I said, the innocent. They live in La La Land. They could be very spiritual. They live in the clouds. They're the fool. They don't really have discernment down. They kind of get, taken by the pyramid scheme, or the next person sells them on something and they have to learn discernment. Uranus or Chaos is freedom, independence, social activists. They tend to be very smart, book smart possibly. Pluto or Hades, again, dark humor, depressed, suicidal, hermetic. Black Moon, Lilith or Hera, you've heard me talk about Hera. Scandal, sexual, prostitute, defies the norm. You love to hate this person. She's nagging, annoying. And Chiron, the wounded healer, it could be your animals. So what I did was I took the one before, where those are the characters, and now I gave them Greek gods. I gave them Greek names. These are the Olympian pantheon. These are the gods of Olympus. Okay, again, you can use any mythology, any story, a book, a movie. They all exist. All these characters exist every single time. So your kingdom. I'm using astrology. Do not get caught up in astrology. This is an astrology chart, is a circle. The circle represents your life. The circle represents your subconscious. The circle represents your kingdom. It's in your subconscious, in your mind, and then it turns into your world, circular, that all the players live in your world. You have a world at home. You have a world at work. You have a world at the gym. You have a world with your boyfriend and girlfriend. This exists in every one of your worlds, okay? So you might have 12 tricksters if you have 12 areas of your life that you live. I say to go to the family. I think that's the easiest way. Give it your brother, your sister, your dog, your friends' names, like your immediate, and then go, oh, at the gym, this is the trickster, this is the Hera, this is the innocent. That's my opinion. The layout looks differently than everyone else's, but has the same players and the same rules. You're going to be held to these rules whether you know them. This is the game of life. This is your subconscious, whether you know your story, whether you know your values, whether you know the players, they exist. Wouldn't you want to know the rules? The astrology chart is one way, one of many ways, and I gave you, the kosher lecture on Tuesday specifically leading up to this, that you can get there any way. This is just one way, and I think it's such an easy representation because it's a picture. It's you on a piece of paper. It's your mind on a piece of paper. How much easier, but don't get caught up that that's the only way. Your astrology chart, or the game that we're playing, the one I'm creating as the kingdom, and the one that I'm going to kind of give you a modification version of the astrology chart today, is a mental x-ray. Okay? We don't have an x-ray of our subconscious. Does not exist. Well, it does. It's your chart and this game if you don't like the astrology chart. Okay, you can take an x-ray of all your body, but you cannot take an x-ray of your subconscious. Yes, you can take a brain scan, but that does not necessarily mean that that's your subconscious and telling what the rules of your life are and what you came to do. The easiest way to see your kingdom, in my opinion, is your chart, your mental x-ray, you on a piece of paper. It has all the players. It has all 12, no more, no less. It's your subconscious on a piece of paper. If you have a physical map of your body, do you really think you don't have one of your mind? I mean, you believe in God, in the universe, whatever. You think that we only have materials and tools to see the physical body, that if we don't see something, it doesn't exist? We all know we have a soul. We all know we have something that animates the body. Do you think we really didn't come with rules or a picture or a map of that? I don't believe the world works that way. You may not know how to read an x-ray, so you find a doctor or specialist. You may not know how to read your subconscious. You may not know how to read an astrology chart, so you find a specialist. I'm here teaching you so that you don't have to continually go back to that person to tell you what's wrong with you, and you can learn how to read it yourself. That's true liberation. That's true freedom. Just because you know what your pancreas does it fail to work? If you don't know what your pancreas does it stop working? No. Well, just because you don't know what your Pluto is doing, or your Hera or your Jupiter, they don't fail to work. They're still living out in your life, in your mind, what they came to do. You not knowing something doesn't stop it from happening. You breathe whether you don't know it, how it works or not. Your pancreas, your liver. That's the way it is. The mind is no different. I don't know why we think it is. So this is the psychological organs, these 12 players. So this is a little representation of your board game. So think of the circle as your subconscious mind, and also your circle as your family or the gym or your job, whatever you want to do it. I'm recommending your family first, because it's easiest to see and identify. And those players, even if you stop talking to your mom or your dad, doesn't matter. They're always your mom or your dad. So these players, when it's the family, it's kind of easier to see. This doesn't matter if a brother died, they're still your brother. So that's why I say use the family and then extrapolate out from there. Your board game is your subconscious mind. You live it out as your life. Nothing is happening to you. You are in control of the players. You're in control of things that come in and out of your life, whether you know it or not. You don't know what the pancreas does, it still works. Same thing. But that's called unconscious or subconscious. In spiritual terms, that's being asleep. Everyone wants to be woke. Well, this is a way of getting woke. Know what's going on, even if you don't change it. But at least have the knowledge to know what's going on. Wisdom is another story. The application of the knowledge, that's your choice. The players are the psychological organs. Again, you only have 12. They show up in every area of your life, all 12, all the time. You can create one whole game for life or one for each section of your life. It doesn't matter, it's the same thing. You can change the rules, but you cannot change the players. The way to change the rules is to do things differently. The third part of my Band-Aid approach, hashtag do it differently. Okay, so this is in alignment with dethroning your parents. This is in alignment with knowing your values. This is in alignment to know how your subconscious works, how your judgments work. All of this is like sort of all put together into this game. The players will not change. If you substitute your mother, she dies, God forbid, another maternal figure will come in to replace her. If your mother abandoned you, you have a mother that's like a grandmother or a mother figure at work. It's inevitable. These energies exist. The universe, the body, the mind do not like empty spaces, and there's 12 spaces that have to be filled. You change the rules by knowing the rules and then making conscious decisions, aka being an adult, to change your life. This does not happen automatically. So I want to give you a little mythology primer and the shortcut, okay? If it really is a shortcut, okay? So heaven and earth are mom and dad. So in your life, heaven and earth, your mother, your father are, call it Uranus, call it Gaia. In mythology, Uranus and Gaia, they're heaven and earth. You can call it the sky, you can call it the universe, you can call it heaven, you can call it God, it doesn't matter. And then the earth is Mother Earth. So if you know anything about shamanism, when we open sacred space, we say Father Sky and Mother Earth. It's to this. Why do we have the representation of Jesus or God as male and Mother Mary as female? She's the mother, and God or Christ is the Father. Okay, Father, Son, Holy Ghost, and then on earth is the representation of the mother. So this is seen in every religion and every philosophy. We're just going to call it heaven and earth for today to get away religious implications. They get married and they have all these children. They have 7 children. They have Zeus, they have Hera, they have Pluto, they have Neptune, Chiron, and Demeter. These are going to be players in your chart. They're going to be players in your game, in your kingdom. You're going to name and identify your Zeus in your life, your Hera in your life, your Pluto. I have a sample of my family, how I name them. Then these 7 children had these 3 children, Apollo, Mercury, Aries. For today, we're just going to go through that. Not going to get into the depths and details. There's myth upon myth upon myth. That's not important today. Just know that from mother and father, everybody comes from mother and father. Everybody has spirit, which is the heavens. Everybody has a physical body, which is the earth. You are the union of spirit and matter. You are the product of an egg and a sperm. Everyone agrees on that. And then the children of that union show up on your board game. Those are the players. Now, I mentioned a shortcut. There's one shortcut to the game of life. Personally, I don't think it's a shortcut, but it is a shortcut if you know how to do it. Quick, in and out, you win. Uranus, or the heavens, or the sky, was castrated, I told you, by Saturn. So spirit is castrated by the body, so your spirit goes into the body. So it doesn't matter if you use Uranus or Gaia, if you use heaven or earth, you have spirit, you have matter. Same thing here. You have spirit, Uranus, castrated by the body, limited. The soul enters the body. There's your birth. The child of that union is Aphrodite. Aphrodite, I represent intentionally with a heart. The answer to life, the shortcut to life, the fast track to all the pain and suffering is self-love and agape love. Love thy neighbor. What Jesus said, love thy neighbor as thyself. Both parts. Love yourself, third chakra, your kingdom. Hold your boundaries. Love your neighbor, your friends, your family, your kids, everybody else. Boundary. 50% you, 50% your partner or your kids or your friends, whatever. Yesterday I gave a couple readings and I told both people, because they had the similar issue, you are 50% and all the people in your life, if there's 1, 2, or 20, get the other 50%. You cannot give more. 48 to 52 I use as a range because obviously nothing is a perfect boundary set in stone. You have wiggle room. This is the shortcut. Your spirit and your matter teach you your eros love, your erotic love, so sex and everything that you love, your desires, and your agape love teaches you true love, love to self, and then compassion, empathy, love to thy neighbor. This is the shortcut. If not, you're going to go through all this hubbubaloo, all these characters, all these people, all this conflict, all this stuff, all this drama, all these stories, but that's what makes life fun. So if you want a super shortcut, great. You're going to get here anyway. You're gonna get there in some version of self-love, in some version, however you get there, you are working towards that. But there is that shortcut if you understand it. Your boundaries, 50%, love thy neighbor, love thyself, agape love, eros love, third chakra, fourth chakra, all the ways I've told you, boom, you win you win life. Most of us don't choose that. So I recommend you name your players. So what I did was I took all of the players. Again, you have this on your astrology chart. If you like astrology, they're already named for you. They're already placed for you. There's nothing left for you to do except understand the voices, which I'll get to. But have fun with this. This is a game I'm creating. You can make the board game and you can put your little players, okay? Start with your family. Personally, I think it's the easiest way to identify the players, and you can branch out. You know the quality of your mother, of your father, if it's your aunts, your uncles, your brothers, your sisters, your dog, you kind of know your best friend, you kind of know their personality. You know who might be the prostitute. You know who might be the innocent. You know who might be the limitation, the ball buster. So it's easiest that way. You can create a kingdom at work, in love, with your friends, etc. afterwards. But I think the family is a place to start. That's going to be your main sort of kingdom that you live out over and over. Mother and father are mother and father. They never, ever, ever change. Representatives of mother and father show up all the time. But you cannot, whether you know them, adopted, they died, it doesn't matter, they're there. All players show up in every place in your life. All players have the same role no matter where they show up. The trickster and the nurturer, doesn't matter if they show up at work, there's a trickster, there's a nurturer. If you're with your friends, there's a trickster, there's a nurturer. You've got the friend that's gossipy, you've got the friend that's slutty. There's your Hermes, there's your Black Moon Lilith, or your Hera. They show up all the time. Name them many, many times over. It's the same character. Example, Aries' role is conflict and aggression, whether at work, school, home, or love. So identify the person that represents conflict or aggression or assertion at work, in love, or in your family. Identify the player and you know his or her role in your life and the psyche. If you understand the player, you understand what they're doing in your life. So that's why I say the family. So if my brother is the conflictive one, and I know how to manage my brother, then when I find conflict in my workplace, I'm going to manage it the same way, unless you're trying to change it, and we'll get to that. So you've now identified your players. So I'm just going to kind of go briefly through mine a second. I forgot to do that. My dad is Robert. My mother's Blanca. My best friend is Maria. Dino's my dog. Donald's my boyfriend. Spencer, Stephen, and Sophia are my children. Susie's my sister. Richard's my brother. Adriana's my best friend. And my other best friend is Jennifer. So I put my kids, my friends, my dog, my boyfriend, and my parents, and my siblings. That's a good sort of representation of the most 12 important people in my life. If we did our classroom, I would have each of you as one of these players too. Okay, and of course, if you're in a group of multitude, our class isn't that big, but if we had 50 students, then many people would be the trickster, many people would be the innocent, many people would be the limitation. It doesn't matter, but they have to show up 12, so it doesn't matter how many people, there's always those 12 people or archetypes or energies or voices present, or psychological organs. So now, once you've identified who's who, make two lists. What are the collaborative voices and what are the competitive voices? Who gets along in your kingdom? If my daughter here gets along, who did I put as Zeus? As Spencer, okay. With her brother Spencer, they're going to be in the same column. And then these are the people that don't get along. Okay? So you just put, these are the people that get along. Again, pick one area of your life. Then again, you're going to relive it the same over and over and over again. Again, I personally think it's the family, but that's your choice. So put the people that get along as collaborative in one area and the people that don't get along. So my mother and my father are obviously in different columns because my mother doesn't talk to my dad. So she has to be a competitive voice. She causes conflict unnecessarily, so I put her there. Some players get along. These are your collaborative voices. These do not cause you an issue. These are your strengths. Most people in your life are collaborative and they come to help, not harm you. So that's another way to look at it. Doesn't mean that my mother comes to harm me. Do not misinterpret. Some mothers do. That's your competitive voice. Those are the people that show up as your nemesis or problematic people in your life. You live this story over and over and over again. This is what causes incongruence and cognitive dissonance. I know you guys know my story of the student that said, I like thin crust, and stretched her fingers to indicate thick. There's an incongruence there. She says one thing and does another. That's another way to identify these people. They promise something, they don't follow through. They say they're going to do something, they don't. That can be a problem. That can be a competitive voice. These do not go away. Either the collaborative competitive voices, these players are the players. However, you can quiet these voices. Remember, this game is all in your head. You are then manifesting and creating it to be your world, your life, your work, your job, your family, etc., etc., etc. But they're in your head, these voices that become the players. Your collaborative voices do not cause you problems. That's the part of you you like. So if you're assertive, you like that, you speak up for yourself, you know how to ask for a raise, great. It's not going to cause you a problem. It's collaborative. But if you're constantly criticizing yourself because you're too fat, you're too skinny, you're not enough, that's a competitive voice. You might want to identify who gave you that voice. For instance, if your sister, perfect older sister, like I say, was always criticizing you, or you were always being compared to her, she might end up in your competitive voices, even though she may not be a bad person, but that's the voice you associate with what she's going to say to you. The voices do not go away. The people do not go away. The players do not go away ever. However, one of the ways to win the game is to quiet them. The way to quiet these voices is to meet them in the middle, what I call the 48 to 52. Most of us ignore them or we give into them completely. Screw it, I'm such a loser, I'm so fat, I'm going to pig out and eat the whole pie. That's giving into the voice. It's screaming at you later because now it's saying you're fat, you're fat, you're fat, you're fat. You didn't quiet it. Meeting them in the middle, finding a way to satisfy the voice is how you win and is how you manage the voice. The voices don't go away, just like the players don't go away. This is a life game from the moment of conception to death. Collaborative voices in astrology, if you like the astrology language, are considered conjunctions, sextiles, and trines. These are the tools that you've been given in this lifetime to navigate the competitive voices, what are called in astrology the squares and oppositions. Most people have more conjunctions, sextiles, and trines in a lifetime than they have squares and oppositions. Your collaborative voice column will be longer usually than your competitive. If not, you really have to look at that because you're creating all this conflict and all these players that don't get along. So people that are uber competitive, uber, conflicted might have a board game that looks a little different. But for the most part, you're going to have a cluster of your collaborative voices that get along and a couple that are your competitive voices. You could see that in the chart for those of you who like astrology as squares and oppositions. This is what I focus on in therapy, in sessions. These are the voices that cause the problems. This is that where we live out the 0 to 100. This is where we need to learn the 48 to 52 to quiet those voices so that they don't destroy us, the self-destruction I talked about. The conjunctions, sextiles, or trines are the collaborative voices that equal the people in your collaborative voice column. Your friends, not your enemies, are the ones that come with the answers, the tools for you to navigate and manage your competitive voice. You want to listen to those people. They have your best interests at heart. Not all the time. They're your voices in your head. but those are usually the people that you find as sage, as wise, that you go to listen to for advice or whatnot. On your board, put your competitive voices on players opposite themselves. This is super important. If you have competitive voices, let's say your brother, your sister, and your father, those were the three that ended up in your column, put them separate. They do not get along, so they don't hang out. Even at family reunions, they're fight, fight, fight. Those are the ones that you want to sit at different tables at your wedding because you know it's going to be a disaster. So put that on your board. Assume it's your wedding and you're doing the seating arrangements. Put your collaborative voices next to each other. Those you can sit together at your wedding. Those can be at the same table. All voices are your parents' voices. Remember, I told you everything comes from mom and dad, from spirit and matter, from the egg and the sperm. All of the voices at the end of the day are mom and dad. But this is a way to sort of make it a little easier that you can see how those voices show up. That has become your inner voice, the voice you hear in your head. So we always see in videos and movies the little devil on the shoulder and the angel on the shoulder. Same thing. Competitive voice, the devil. Collaborative voice, the angel. Those are voices in your head that you need to learn to manage and quiet. You cannot shut them down. That's impossible. You get these voices, you get these at the moment of conception. It was the voice that was in your mom and your dad's head, the things they liked about themselves, the good buckets, the things they didn't like about themselves, the bad buckets. It became the things you like about yourself, no problem, collaborative voice. The things you don't like about yourself are the competitive voice, the shadow, the bad bucket. I've said it in 10 different ways. This is your creation myth. Your story is your story is your story. You're not going to change your story. You can change the ending. You're not going to change the players, although you can switch out one boyfriend for another, but they might both represent Zeus. But you can learn to quiet them, manage them with your 48 to 52 tools. Your collaborative voice are your values and your good buckets. These don't cause an issue. Emmanuel likes that he's a hard worker. That does not cause an issue. Your competitive voice is your judgment. He does judge lazy people, and if he is lazy, he will beat himself up because it's a judgment from the voice in your head. One of the players in your game of life criticized about being lazy, or was so lazy you looked at them and said, I don't want to be that. You already are that. It's a player in your head and in your board and in your life. The bad bucket and judgments, a competitive voice, cause the conflict. If it causes an inner conflict, it causes an outer conflict. That is the law of correspondence. If there's a fight outside at work, it's happening in your head. These two are mirrors of each other. All competitive voices are people in your life that cause you an issue. Identify the person. You can identify the God, the name, the family story, whatever that is. That's what I have so far. Any questions? Like I said, I'm creating this board game, and I'm going to stop recording. And it's going to be based on this, so people can have a physical representation of their site.